What's going on, everybody? Hope you're all doing well. Just give a minute for folks to get in here. Pretty excited to be sharing this trip with you guys and talking about what an incredible experience it was. I'm going to show you a lot of pictures, videos will be coming soon. I'm already working on editing the first video from the trip, which is from our day visiting the pyramids at Giza. So you'll be able to see that. You'll see us going inside of it, which is quite an experience in and of itself, for sure. And if you have any specific questions about anything related to Egypt or any of the sites that we visited, just let me know, and I'll try to address those as best I can. I'll share a lot of it as we go through, and I kind of show you a lot of the photos from the trip and talk about some of the stuff we did. But like I said, just throw any questions you got out there, and I'll try to answer them best I can. What was it like beholding the pyramid? So it was interesting because you kind of go from not really seeing them at all to suddenly being there, because the pyramids are right at the edge of the city. The cities of Cairo and Giza, which are really just one big city. Cairo is the east side of the Nile, and Giza is the west side of the Nile. Between them and with the metro area, you're talking about basically the population of Canada in one big city. And the city goes right to the pyramids. I mean, the pyramids are right at the edge of the city. So in one direction, you look and you see the pyramids and you see desert. In the other direction, you just see a city that's home to tens of millions of people. It's crazy. So how far up the Nile did we go? We went as far as ancient Thebes, which would be Luxor today. So we didn't go all the way down to like Aswan or anything like that. So I'm going to answer all of this when we get to it, because I'm going to show you some of the images from inside the pyramids. What was my favorite interesting fact that I learned there that I might not have learned otherwise? That's a great question. I learned a lot of things that I thought were really interesting, but I'd say the one that I was surprised by the most was how many Jews and Christians there are in Egypt. It's 90% Muslim, but we saw synagogues, we saw churches, and they all, at least from what I could understand and what I could see, live in relative harmony there, which I think is awesome. Yes, I definitely want to visit Jordan at some point. In fact, one of the people who was on our Egypt tour with us had just come there from Jordan. So that was pretty cool. Did I get to see the Sphinx's tail? I mean, I did walk around the entire Sphinx. I'll show you some pictures here in just a minute. So, did you visit any sites associated with Napoleon? Eldon, no, we did not. I mean, nothing other than what was, and nothing specific to Napoleon. I mean, we visited sites that obviously Napoleon also visited. But let's go ahead. Let me go ahead and bring up the some pictures here, and I'll start kind of talking through the trip a little bit. Let's see. Here we go. So this was our hotel. This was our first night in Egypt. And there's the view from the roof of our hotel. That's the Nile River. Our hotel is actually on an island in the middle of the Nile River. So that's the bridge connecting our island to the other side there. This was kind of cool. Our bus when we were in Cairo was St. Christopher Travel. You see the image there. So St. Christopher historically was known as, like, the word, my name, Christopher, actually means one who carries Christ, because St. Christopher, I guess, carried the baby Jesus across the river when his family had fled to Egypt. And so St. Christopher is closely associated with Egypt. So that was pretty neat. No, there are no crocodiles in the Nile River in Egypt. You have to go all the way down to Sudan if you want to see crocodiles in the Nile River. There haven't been any crocodiles in the Nile River for decades in Egypt because of the Aswan Dam. All the crocodiles are south of the dam, so basically you're into Sudan at that point. So nope, didn't see any crocodiles. Let's see. Can I increase the volume? I mean, not really. I'm maxed out. So unfortunately, you'll have to increase the volume yourself if you want to do that. Yeah. So listen, if you have questions about sites we visited, just hang tight because I'm going to walk you through all this stuff. So to keep me from answering the same questions over and over again, things like did we see hieroglyphics and did we visit the Valley of the Kings? Just wait, because yeah, you'll see that. All right. So first stop was the pyramids. This is the Great Pyramid. So a lot of times you will see people show the second pyramid. So there's 3 pyramids. It was basically father, son, and grandson. So Khufu is the guy who builds the first one. The Great Pyramid is this one that you see right here. It's not the one that still has the cap of limestone on it, which you'll see in a later picture. But a lot of times people think that's the Great Pyramid. It's the one in the center because it sits on higher ground. And so from certain angles, when you're looking at pictures, it looks bigger. But this is the Great Pyramid. This is the biggest one. And yes, there will be videos coming about it. There's me right at the base of it. So you see the people walking there. And a lot of people have asked me questions like, oh, I didn't know you were allowed to climb on the pyramid. Well, you're not really. The people that you see here, this is people going to and from the entrance to go into the pyramid. And you had to buy a special ticket for that beyond just your regular ticket. And it wasn't very expensive. None of the tickets were very expensive. But that's us going in. So here I am at the entrance to the Great Pyramid, which if you are claustrophobic, this would not be something you would ever want to do. Because it got really tight. Now this part here, you're seeing the big wide open part, which is basically you had to go through an area that's about 4 feet wide and about 3.5 feet high. And you go through that for like 100, 150 feet. And then you get to this big chamber here. And it's still pretty tight. Like when people are coming down, you kind of have to turn sideways to let them pass because it's really only designed for one-way traffic. And so then this is the actual chamber in the center of the Great Pyramid. This is what they call the King's Chamber. It's the big open area. And you'll see the sarcophagus there, which obviously they never found any mummy. And there are a lot of questions about whether this was ever really the burial place of Khufu or whether it was like kind of misleading, because what you notice is there's no hieroglyphics on the walls. And one thing you'll see in all the other burial chambers for Egyptian pharaohs, including in older pyramids like the Step Pyramid, is you see hieroglyphics everywhere, like prayers and stuff, religious texts. That was actually one of the biggest surprises for me. I had watched a ton of videos, people saying how horrible Egypt was. They'd never go back. The scammers were terrible. I found it to not be any worse than anywhere else that I've been, like Rome or Paris. That said, I think if you go by yourself, it's a lot worse. We were in a group with a group guide, and I noticed that when we were in the group, they didn't really bother us all that much, really no more than you might see anywhere else. Times when I was by myself, it seemed to get a little worse. So I'm not saying that the people in those videos who say how awful it is are wrong or lying. I'm just saying their experience was very different than mine. And I think they may have been by themselves, and that's probably why. I would highly recommend if you go to Egypt, go as part of a group tour, and 90% of those issues people complain about won't be a factor for you, won't be an issue for sure. It really was not that bad. Not bad at all. I was prepared for far, far worse than it was. All right. So yeah, here's more in kind of the grand chamber. So this is the second pyramid. This is the pyramid of Khafre. This is the one a lot of times you'll see people portray as the Great Pyramid. If you see the limestone cap there, which all 3 pyramids originally had that, kind of the outer casing, this is the only one that still has the casing up at the top. If you see the casing, you're looking at the second pyramid, the second of the 3. It's only slightly shorter than the Great Pyramid, and it does look taller depending on where you are. And then this is the third pyramid, the pyramid of Menkaure, who was the grandson and son of the guys who built the other 2 pyramids. And this is damage that was caused, I think, a couple hundred years ago. But we went into the first pyramid and into the third pyramid. You couldn't go into the second one. It's currently closed for renovations and restoration, things like that. So you could only go into the other two. And these smaller pyramids you see here, they exist next to all the pyramids, and those are for the wives, like some of the most important wives of these pharaohs. Let's see. No, King Tutankhamun is buried in the Valley of the Kings. Tutankhamun's about 1,000 years after the pyramids were built. The pyramids are like the third and fourth dynasty. They're much older. They're the old kingdom of Egypt. This is like 2500, 2600 BC. King Tutankhamun is part of the 18th, 19th, and 20th dynasties who built tombs underground, places like the Valley of the Kings. All right, so let's take a look at some more. Oh yeah, we got to ride camels, which was quite an experience, and I'm super glad we did it. That was a lot of fun. Excuse me. Took a little getting used to riding the camels. Once you got used to it, it wasn't so bad. But we had a blast doing it. I'm really glad we did that. This is my view sitting on the camel before the camel stood up. And then there's a view. There's Hamish right there, one of the guys on the tour with us. So you see right there, see that shot? You see how the second pyramid, the Pyramid of Khafre, looks significantly bigger than the one behind it. Well, it's not. The one behind it's actually taller. It's just the angle that we're looking at and the ground that it's built on. But that's why it gets confusing for some people. Because, yeah, right there, I mean, that is not the biggest pyramid. But, yeah, there's one of our group shots. So you see the Great Pyramid on the left, the Pyramid of Khufu. Then you have Khafre's pyramid in the middle, and then Menkare's pyramid on the right there. So amazing. Yeah, it's forced perspective. That's exactly what it is. Thoughts on Canada's new prime minister? Don't really know much about him, so I don't really have any thoughts yet. I guess we'll give it some time. This is one of my favorite pictures that we got while we were there. I went down and, like, because a lot of us were standing up at a vantage point getting pictures like the one you see in our group shot that I showed you a second ago. So what I did was I walked down the hill a little bit behind where our group is here and had this picture taken, and that's one that's definitely going to go up on my wall. Pretty excited about that. There's another, just another shot. And this is the third pyramid, the Pyramid of Menkare. That's some damage that was caused more recently. You can see there's granite at the bottom. That's part of the casing stones. And the granite was brought all the way from Aswan, like 900 kilometers when they built the pyramid. It's just incredible feat of engineering. This is the middle pyramid there. So here we are at the at the Sphinx, and we walked through one of the I think it was the funerary temple where the embalming would have taken place for Khafre, which is the guy who built the middle pyramid, and that's the one that's behind. The Sphinx is in front of the middle pyramid. You walk through that temple in order to get to the Sphinx. And the Sphinx, I've had people ask me, was it bigger or smaller than you thought it was? It was about the size I expected it to be. It's not really all that big. You can't walk any closer. Like where I'm standing here is about as close as you can get to it. Hi Eli, how's it going? That is Frigid VR is in fact my son Eli in the chat. So how much did the entire Egypt trip cost? So I believe, I'm trying to remember what our cost was per person. I want to say it was in the neighborhood of $2,200 or $2,400 a person. And that covered all of the expenses while we were there, except for a few of the dinners. Covered all your breakfasts, a few of your dinners, but you had to pay for your other dinners, pay for your lunches. Some of that was covered too, some of the lunches. And then of course your flights to get to and from. But but it wasn't bad. And honestly, things are relatively inexpensive in Egypt. Like I think the average price I paid for a nice dinner at a restaurant, sit-down restaurant in Egypt, including my drinks and my dessert, was about $8 US. It's really, really cheap. Yeah, I saw the Rosetta Stone in the British Museum. I don't think there's a replica in Egypt that I'm aware of. Yeah, I mean, we ate Egyptian food the whole time I was there. So yeah, and it was very good. So and another thing you'll see right here in this image is right between the paws of the Sphinx is what's known as the Dream Stele, which was put there by, I think it was Tutmos the Fourth, where he talks about how he was not the crown prince, but the gods intervened and told him in a dream that he would in fact become Pharaoh, even though he was not the crown prince and was not heir, because his elder brother ended up dying. As I mentioned once already, there are no crocodiles in the Nile in Egypt. You have to go past the Aswan Dam south into Sudan if you want to see crocodiles in the Nile. They do not exist in the Nile River in Egypt. Okay, another one of the Sphinx. This is the temple there. This is a view from the area right around the Sphinx. It was really, really cool. Just amazing. That's another view of the Great Pyramid there. So this is the Egyptian Museum. This is the one that's actually going to be closing because they're building the new Grand Museum over by the pyramids. This one was down in the center of town, right near our hotel, and they still have all of I shouldn't say all of, but a lot of the treasure from King Tut's tomb is in this museum, but it is going to be moved to the new museum in a few months. So if we end up doing another Egypt trip, we probably won't go to this museum at all because everything from this museum will have been moved to the new Grand Museum. And also all of the mummies of all of the kings from the Valley of the Kings used to be in this museum, but they've been moved to the Museum of Egyptian Civilization, which we visited toward the end of the trip, but you couldn't take pictures of any of the mummies of the kings, so you won't see those. So these are just some of the images from inside the Egyptian Museum. Some really, really cool stuff there. This guy's got a mustache, which I always thought was kind of awesome. These are the canopic jars that held the organs of King Tut. Those are on display, and you couldn't take pictures in the main King Tut exhibit. Let's see. I'm not entirely sure why it's not advancing. All right, give me a minute. I'll get that fixed here. Oh, there we go. Okay, so these are actually all mummies that they just had rooms full of these shelves with unwrapped mummies that were on the walls. No, they are not fake. They are very, very real. So I'm not sure why you're saying they're fake. So this here is actually one of King Tut's great grandparents. They had these two mummies on display. They were the parents of one of the queens, and the queen, their daughter was a queen who was also King Tut's grandmother. So their mummies are on display there. Pretty awesome. Really kind of very somber to be. And I thought, like, when we went later on to the Egyptian Civilization Museum and saw all of the monarchs, like from the 18th dynasty, I thought it was very tastefully done, the way that they had these. Because remember, these are human remains. These are people who actually lived 3,000-4,000 years ago, staring at their bodies, which, could be in poor taste if it was done poorly. But I thought it was done in a relatively a tasteful way. No, if you're gonna I didn't mean to ban him completely, but I'll have to go in and undo that later. I didn't mean to ban you completely, but I'm not going to let you post fake crap in the chat either. So, yeah, no, Egypt did not know the Mayans existed. He was just making crap up. I don't know where he got that from. Would you recommend a career in history? Yeah, I mean, it depends on what you want to do with it, because there's not exactly a lot of jobs out there for that sort of thing. Like, look at me, I had to make my own. I mean, you could work in a museum, you could work in research, you could do, go on and do archaeology, things like that. But you just kind of need to have an idea of exactly what it is that you want to do with such a degree before you do it. Did you face the Sphinx like Napoleon? I mean, I guess I did. Only when Napoleon saw it, it was buried up to the neck, and now it's unburied. It was the oldest pharaoh that we saw. I mean, most of the pharaohs we have are from like the 18th dynasty. So, I mean, you're talking like Ahmose the First, I guess, would probably be the oldest one that we saw. Okay. Yeah, so this is, I believe that chair was also from King Tut's tomb, if I remember right. Just really, I mean, just look at the inside of these coffins and just all of the decoration, all the hieroglyphics. So here we are, and now this is Saqqara. Saqqara is so cool. Saqqara is the site of the oldest pyramid, the oldest one built in Egypt. It was the step pyramid of Zoser, that's a couple generations further back from the Great Pyramid. So there's the step pyramid there. It was originally built as like a mastaba, just like a one layer there, and then they added to it. And the guy who built it on behalf of Pharaoh was a guy named Imhotep. Now, Imhotep is not to be confused with the fictional Imhotep in the Mummy movie. This Imhotep was, I think he was a priest. He was like a vizier or like a high-ranking official for Pharaoh Zoser, and he's the one who built this pyramid. We did get to go inside of this pyramid as well. There's another group picture with some of the stray dogs. There were stray dogs everywhere there. So this is us going down into the oldest pyramid in Egypt. And you can see there, that's the entrance. I believe this entrance was created. This is not the entrance that existed at the time it was built. And this is actually when you get into the center of the pyramid, where you're going in this one. When we went to the Great Pyramid, you actually are climbing up into the center of the pyramid. Whereas this pyramid, the burial chamber is actually at the base, at the bottom. So we actually were walking in, we went down. So we're down actually just slightly below ground. And then you see this pit that goes down into the ground, probably a good 60 or 70 feet, maybe more than that. And that's us looking down in the bottom of the pyramid. So there's some more shots of that. And then here, so this is from Saqqara. I was looking south. What you're looking at there is the Red Pyramid, it's called. And it is almost as big as the Great Pyramid. And until the Great Pyramid was built, this pyramid you're seeing here was the tallest man-made structure on Earth. And you can't see it in this image, but we could actually see the bent pyramid just to the left of that. You can't see it in the picture I took here, but we actually could see the bent pyramid. Yeah, Jeremy, that's exactly what they did. He just stacked smaller and smaller mastabas on top of each other to make the step pyramid. When is my next trip? The next trip is at the end of April. It's Germany, Slovakia, Czechia, and Austria. That's a group trip that we're doing. How was church? Church was great. No, I'm not really jet lagged. I recovered from that several days ago, I think. I did get a lot of sleep to get caught up on things. So now these images that you're seeing now are inside of, next to the step pyramid. There are some other tombs, like some mastaba tombs for some high-ranking officials. And this one was one of the viziers for Pharaoh, and some amazing color inside of this. And then you can just see some of the hieroglyphics here, just everywhere you went. Look at the color. I mean, that is from nearly 4,000, more than 4,000. It's like 4,500 years ago, and it still got the color. It's just, oh my gosh, it's incredible. And then, of course, we went to the Pyramid of King Teti, and that is inside the Pyramid of King Teti. You see his sarcophagus there. Yes, I'd very much like to visit the Balkans. From the photos, it looked like I napped a lot. Yeah, I mean, I was pretty tired, especially after, you'll see when we get to, when we took the sleeper train from Cairo to Luxor, I got zero sleep on that train. Okay, now this is Memphis. So Memphis was the ancient capital. It's right outside of Cairo. And this is that huge statue of Ramses II at the Open Air Museum in Memphis. I am visiting Austerlitz, but not in my next Europe trip. I'm going to Europe at the end of April. Austerlitz isn't until late in the year, so that'll be a while yet. Yes, there's a ton of archaeology still going on in Egypt, Steve. In fact, they just, in the last 20 years, have uncovered more at the Valley of the Kings, another tomb that they uncovered. So there's still a lot going on. Okay. Yeah. So this is all Memphis. This is outside at Memphis. You got some really cool artifacts there on display. They, like I said, they call this an open air museum. This right here is a mummification table. This is an actual table that they did the mummifications on, and you can see how it was tilted, and it had like an area like where the fluids would run down and drain in the hole there. Really, if you've ever seen where they do embalming today in a funeral home, it's really not a lot different. It's the same concept. They drain it in a table, and all the fluids go down to the bottom. It's exactly how they did it in mummification 5,000 years ago. So it's really, really cool stuff. I mean, just such amazing history. That is up in Alexandria, which is pretty far to the north of where we were. We were in Cairo, which Cairo is at the south end of the Nile Delta. So you have to go all the way up to the coast, a couple hundred miles up to Alexandria, which is right on the Mediterranean. And that's where a lot of that's going on. Okay. That's, I don't know why that one's there, but that's me and my friend Sander, who, yeah, there we go. There's one of the sleeping pictures. That was me resting against a tree in Memphis while we waited for the rest of the group to finish walking around. All right. So then that night we went to this brand new train station that they just opened. It just opened in January in Cairo. It's their brand new big train station. Really, really nice there that we boarded our sleeper train. So there's me and Sander. You see his bed up there, and then my bed folded down right there. The bed was really comfortable, and the food was decent that they fed us on the train. It's like airline food, but it was good. Like some rice and like a chicken schnitzel, some French fries, things like that. But it was so like bumpy and rickety on the train that I just couldn't get any sleep. Every time I'd fall asleep, we'd hit, like we'd shake or something, and just didn't sleep at all. And so when we arrived in Luxor the next morning, I was absolutely exhausted. Happy to see you survive the hail. Yeah. So I don't have a picture of it, but I did take a video of it, and I posted it on Instagram. When we were in Cairo at the Egyptian Museum that you saw earlier, it started hailing, and they said it had been forever. Like some of those people had never seen hail before. And all I could think of course, was the plagues of Egypt in the book of Exodus in the Bible, and hail was one of those. So yeah, it was crazy. Okay. Yeah, more pictures of the, there's the inside of the train. And then the next morning we arrived in Luxor, and we went to the temple at Karnak. This is the temple of Karnak. Oh my gosh. Blown away, absolutely blown away by the temple at Karnak. Incredible. site. Yeah. So here's the thing: if you look at a map of Egypt, the floodplain, the area around the Nile, very fertile. I mean, so fertile, in fact, that Egypt was like the breadbasket of the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire got a lot of its grain from Egypt. So you wouldn't think, like, without really kind of processing too much, that Egypt would, of all the places in the Roman Empire, be the place they would get all their food from. But because of that floodplain there around the Nile, the ground on either side of the Nile is some of the most fertile ground anywhere in the world, and great for growing things like wheat. We saw wheat growing everywhere there. Of course, now they don't have flooding anymore because they built the Aswan Dam, and that controls the flooding. But it's still, if you look at Egypt, in fact, I'll show you. Either side of the Nile, very green. Then you get a mile or two away from the Nile, you start to get into the desert. So let me pull up a map here and I'll show you what I mean. But they did say that they are in the process of a project that's going to turn like 25% of the Egyptian desert into green, fertile land, which is going to be nuts. It's going to be nuts, and it'll be huge for them if they're able to do that. All right, so here's a map. So here's what I mean. You see all the desert of Egypt, but look at all that green along the Nile. And that is where the Egyptian Empire was. I mean, that's where their kingdom was in that floodplain, in that green area. How do you sign up for what trip? Because the trip that's coming up at the end of April is closed. We can't. I mean, we still had a few open spots on it, but I had to close it because I had to submit the room assignments and all the details. And so, unfortunately, even though there are spots available, I can't take any more people to sign up for that trip. Any Bible sites? Not specifically, but I mean, obviously, there's a lot of history there connected to things like the Exodus. And sometime I'm going to do a video on all of the archaeological evidence for the Exodus, because there's a lot of it. A lot of people claim there's no archaeological evidence for the Exodus. That is absolutely not the case. There's a ton of archaeological evidence specifically about the conquest of Canaan that's described in the book of Exodus. And I'll do a video about that at some point. Yeah, so Temple at Karnak, absolutely amazing. One of the coolest sites we saw while we were there. Just massive temple that was built, 3,500 years ago. Just incredible. And a lot of this was underground because it's right in that Nile floodplain. And so over the centuries, a lot of it had gotten buried. And then to clear that right there, you can just see how massive this Karnak temple complex is. Just wow. I can't say wow enough about this site. It was so cool. And a lot of it, actually, I don't know if I specifically have any pictures of it, but Alexander the Great had his name carved around this temple a few places, because Alexander the Great, when he conquered Egypt, wanted to be seen as the legitimate pharaoh. And so he claimed, for example, that Nectanebo II, who was the last native Egyptian-born pharaoh before the Ptolemies, the Greek pharaohs, started, he claimed that Nectanebo was his father, and he claimed he was descended from the Egyptian gods and all this stuff. But his name is carved around the temple at Karnak, which is cool. Saw they had a World War II museum in Iran, a memorial put up for Major Richard Davis Winters there too. Really? That's crazy. I didn't know that. Very cool. Yeah, so you'll see Ramses II all over the temple at Karnak. He carved his name and everything, and he did a lot of the updating of the temple. And here you can see some of the graffiti that was carved by people who came here. There you see 1818, 1820. So some of the dates that were being carved by people as they were discovering these areas. Yeah, there again, just look at the size of these massive pillars at the temple at Karnak. He edited the temple like it's Wikipedia. He did, but he also added to it a lot. And you can see the color up there at the top. Just the colors were so cool. Were the people of Egypt friendly to your group? America doesn't have the best reputation. Absolutely. Everybody was very friendly. And you'll see eventually a picture of him, but Ahmed, who was our group guide, was amazing. I mean, what a great guy. He has a background in archaeology. I guess his wife teaches English. So this was cool. And we learned this while we were there. In Egypt, when kids go to school, they all learn English as a language in school, and they have to learn another language in addition to English. So kids growing up in Egypt are going to be trilingual by the time they get out of school, because they're going to learn English, another language, plus they know Arabic. And Ahmed was amazing. So knowledgeable, so friendly. If I ever go back, I will beg to have Ahmed as our group guide again, because he was so great. He really made the trip for us. This is Ramses' name there. And after a while, you got to recognize the cartouche, which is anytime you see a circle like this with the line like that surrounding hieroglyphics, that means it's a cartouche. That means it's a royal name. So you're looking at the name of a pharaoh. And you pretty quickly learned what Ramses' cartouche looked like, because it's everywhere down there. So this is Ramses II. Were there any Ottoman Empire monuments? I believe there probably were some. We didn't really see any, because most of the places that we were was related to ancient Egypt. That's a great question, because I don't know if I have any pictures. I think I do have some pictures of it. You'll see. When we went to the Valley of the Kings, by the time the Greeks took over Egypt under Alexander the Great, so we're talking like 300 BC. By the time they come along, you got to remember that the tombs in the Valley of the Kings are already over 1,000 years old. And so they were already a tourist attraction. And some of the tombs in the Valley of the Kings were places where these ancient Greeks would actually sleep when they went to visit the Valley of the Kings. And there's graffiti. There's 2,300-year-old graffiti inside these tombs that were 1,000 years older than that. So yeah, it's pretty crazy. Another view of Karnak. Hey, there's Ahmed right there, right in front of the group, walking around. So this is all Karnak. This was a big artificial water, a little pool there at Karnak. Oh yeah, so this was cool. I don't know why. Oh, it's zoomed in. That's why. Many of us, it was an extra cost, so not everybody did it. It was $120 a person, probably the most expensive thing we did during the tour. We got to go on hot air balloon ride over the Valley of the Kings, over Luxor, the Temple of Hatshepsut, things like that. So that was really, really cool. We had to get up at 4 a.m. to go out and do this. Caden, I wish I could have come on this tour. Next stop, Cape Town. Yes, I am actually strongly considering doing a group tour to South Africa. I just got to find a way to build an itinerary that's going to include like Island Luana and Rorke's Drift, because I definitely want to do those battlefields if I go to South Africa. No, they didn't give us a guide, because reading hieroglyphs is like reading another language. It's not something you're just going to learn in a couple of days. Like I said, you could start to recognize things like Ramses' name because you saw it so often. But I did decide, if I ever am going to go back and do another tour, I'm absolutely going to learn some basic hieroglyphics, which, remember, we've only been able to read for the last less than 200 years, since guys like Champollion actually unlocked hieroglyphics for us. So because there were so many sites where there was just Valley of the Kings, you're going to see just thousands and thousands of images of hieroglyphics lining the walls of these temples. And I wanted so badly to be able to read what they all said. So this was really cool, really, really cool. And actually, we also got a video. This is us crossing the Nile River at like 5 a.m. Before the sun came up to get to the hot air balloon ride. Here we go. There's a little video up.
We were on the Testament Sea on the boat trip.
And there, the sun's coming up. Oh, it was amazing. really, really like nice and smooth. It went up really slowly, and like there you can see on the right, that is the Temple of Hatshepsut over in the corner over there. So fun fact, many of the mummies of the royal kings, like Ramses II and people like that, that were originally buried in the Valley of the Kings, within a couple hundred years of when they were put in their tombs in the Valley of the Kings, they were actually removed from their tombs because their tombs had already been robbed. And they were placed in what they call a mummy cache, and hidden so that people wouldn't desecrate the bodies. And that cache, where they found like 12 of the royal mummies, it was right in this area, right here in the middle of this picture, in the side of the wall. This wall that we're looking at, right on the other side of that, is the Valley of the Kings. So like if I could drill a hole right through this wall, you'd come out in the Valley of the Kings. It's right on the other side. So they were buried right in there, and that's where they were found in the late 1800s. So here's just us viewing some of the temples that are all the temples that the people who were buried in the Valley of the Kings built temples on this side of the Valley of the Kings. There's a Temple of Hatshepsut again, which we did visit, and there we're looking toward the Nile River, toward Luxor. There's a really cool shot of a bunch of and there's 24 people in every one of these balloons. Big thanks to Napoleon's expedition for finding the Rosetta Stone, but that was only the beginning of it. A lot of people have the misconception that when the Rosetta Stone was found, suddenly we could read hieroglyphics. It wasn't that simple, because there was still a lot of work that had to be done. And it was a couple of decades after the Rosetta Stone was found before guys like Champollion finally unlocked the key and figured out how to read hieroglyphics. And it involved some guesswork, and it involved them finding Abu Simbel, which was another site further south. What did they tell us? They didn't actually. Ahmed basically just said he had his own theories about it. But he basically said, we don't know for sure how they built the pyramids. I mean, they probably involved some sort of platforms and like ramps built of sand and different things like that. I mean, there are a lot of theories that are plausible about how they built the pyramids, but they really just don't know for sure. They actually didn't die together. Cleopatra died before or after Antony. Cleopatra had Antony lied to, and he was told that she had died, but she wasn't actually dead. And after Antony took his own life, she actually tried to get herself out of the mess she was in with Octavian, but ended up taking her own life once she realized that Octavian wanted to basically take her back to Rome and parade her in front of everybody, and she wasn't going to have any part of that. Again, there's looking over toward like the Valley of the Kings is right back in here. So these are part of the Colossae of Memnon. So if you ever read about the Colossae of Memnon, right there you go. And that's in an area that's down in front of all of these temples. All right, so here we are, Valley of the Kings. This is a picture of me in front of the tomb of Tutankhamun. This is actually us going down into King Tut's tomb. There is the mummy of King Tut. That is not where he was found. That's where he's on display, which is in a room that's closer to the entrance. You'll see in a minute, you'll see the actual spot where his sarcophagus was. But that is the mummy of Tutankhamun. His is the only mummy of a pharaoh that is still in the Valley of the Kings. All the other mummies of the pharaohs are in Cairo at the the Museum of Egyptian Civilization. Speaking of Christian sites, we're able to visit the St. Sergius Church, where Jesus and the Holy Family stayed in Cairo. No, but that was one of the places I did want to go to if I would have had the chance. We'll do some more of Historia Civilis's Rome stuff. I've done a bunch of their videos already, but I'll get to that one at some point. Okay, so there is King Tut. So all of the tombs have signs on them that basically say don't take photos, but then they totally let you take photos in all of the tombs. In this case, there was actually a guy working in the tomb, and he was standing next to the glass case here where you see King Tut's tomb. And for a very small, let's call it a fee, he took my phone and took a bunch of pictures for me, including one where he shined a light on Tutankhamun's face and put my camera right above in an area that I couldn't go to. He took these pictures for me. So it was really, really cool. There's another shot of him from the side there. Some people say that that is damage that was caused when they excavated the mummy. Other people claim it was caused by a killing blow that murdered him. But a lot of the theories about King Tut's death were that he died of a disease related to the fact that he was the product of multiple generations of inbreeding, which all of the pharaohs were. And then this is the guy went around to the other side of that of the case and took this picture of me. King Tut is not that big. He was actually very tiny. It's just again, this is about perspective, and he's real close to the mummy taking the picture of me on the other side. This is actually the room where Tut's mummy was found. It's a really small tomb. Basically, you walk down the steps, and there's a couple of rooms, and that's it. Compared to the other tombs, really tiny. But remember, King Tut came to the throne at the age of like 9. His father was probably Akhenaten. And then he died by the time he was like 17 or 18. So he's not like a guy like Ramses II, who was on the throne for like 70 years and had plenty of time to build a tomb. The Habsburgs have nothing on the pharaohs when it comes to inbreeding at all. I'm going to make sure I've gotten to all of the... Hey, thank you for that. I appreciate that. I have a lot of friends from South Africa that come to America to work 10 months of the year on farms. Interesting. Very cool. Sorry, I got to sneeze. Angelique, thank you for that. Again, it was great to meet you in Louisville. Everyone should experience Egypt one time. I agree 100%. Oh my gosh, so worth it. Please listen, do not be talked out of Egypt by all the videos from YouTubers saying how awful their experience was. That was not at all our experience. And like I said, I think it's because we were on a group tour with a very knowledgeable guide who prepared us for that stuff, but it really wasn't any worse than you experience anywhere else. I was really apprehensive about what the experience was going to be like because of all the videos I had seen. That was not at all my experience. I absolutely loved Egypt. I loved the people of Egypt. They were very friendly and welcoming. They loved the fact that so many tourists come. We were there during Ramadan, which actually added to the experience because we got to experience what that was like. Ahmed, our guide, oh my gosh. This guy, he was Muslim, as are most people in Egypt, but not all. And so from the morning when we got up, going all day, he's for hours and hours and hours, he's talking to us and helping us tour these sites, all while he can't even take a sip of water because of his faith, because of Ramadan, because they're not allowed to consume any food, drink, anything like that during the daylight hours. And so from the time our tour started, which a lot of days was like 6 a.m., until 6 p.m. when the fast was over, he couldn't even so much as take a sip of water. And that man was a machine. He just went and went and went. And sometimes he didn't even eat at 6 o'clock because we as a group weren't eating until 6:30, 7:30, and he would wait to eat with us. I can't say enough good things about that guy. What an amazing person, super knowledgeable historian and guide. Awesome. All right, so let me show you some of the other tombs. So here's KV5. You can't go. There's 65 known tombs, and they're all labeled KV1, KV2, Kings Valley is all it means. And most of them are closed, either because they're unsafe or because work's still going on, and they open different ones at different times. So there were about 10 or 12 of them that were open when we were there, and I ended up going in 6. Because you get 3. When you buy a ticket to the Valley of the Kings, you get entrance to any 3 tombs among about 10 or so. In addition to that, you can pay extra to get tickets for specific tombs that you have to buy a special ticket for. So like Seti the First, King Tut, a few others. So we bought special tickets for those as well. Yes, I'm about 5'9.5" these days. So KV5 was a tomb that was constructed for the sons of Ramses II. And Ramses II had like 100 kids. He had like hundreds of wives. And there are 120 chambers in KV5. It's massive, but you can't go inside. But I did take a picture of it outside. So, okay, I believe this is inside the tomb of Seti the First, which is by far the most expensive one that you have to buy a separate ticket for. But look at all the hieroglyphics. And this just went on for hundreds and hundreds of feet, down and down and down. Seti the First, who was the father of Ramses II, amazing tomb. The Valley of the Kings was easily one of my favorite sites we visited. So much history. King Tut is, I think, KV 63 or something like that, but it's actually right near the entrance. That's what's fascinating to me. King Tut's tomb was found right near all the other tombs that have been known since antiquity. It was right below the entrance to some of the others. But just look at the details. Look at all of this. And it just went on and on and on like this. Yes, Sweet Roll, I believe that's the case, that the urban sprawl of Cairo has probably taken up the battlefield of the pyramids, because it was like 9 miles from the pyramids. Yeah, KV5 is one I would love to go in if I had the chance. So this is one of the sarcophagi in one of the tombs. Oh, okay, you know what? So this is actually Ramses V and Ramses VI tomb. I believe that's actually Ramses VI sarcophagus. So this one was not, I mean, it was still really cool. KV 62 is Tut. Okay. So this here, this might be us going to the tomb of Seti I. Yeah, this is the entrance to the tomb of Seti I, which is one of the deepest ones. And this was an amazing tomb. It's one of the, like I said, it's the most expensive one. I think you pay it was like $40 US is the equivalent. It was like 2,000 Egyptian pounds or something like that to go in the tomb of Seti I, but it was worth it. Absolutely worth it. Just look at some of the detail here. Any other places in the Middle East that I like to visit? Yeah, Jordan and Israel for sure, but not right now. Eventually, though. Jordan and Israel at the top of my list. How safe was it? No, I never for a minute felt unsafe. I never for a minute felt unwelcome. I'm not saying there aren't places where you'd feel unsafe, but you know what? There's places in the U.S. that I would feel unsafe if I went. And again, we were part of a group tour. So there was always like 20, 25 of us, and we always had a police officer with us. Any tour group bigger than 5 people, you actually have to have a member of the tourism police accompany you. So we actually had a member of the police on our bus with us at all times. Just the reality of things. But no, never for a second did I feel unsafe anywhere we went. Yeah, here inside the tomb of Seti I, just incredible. I didn't specifically see any archaeology, but I know there is some of that going on in some of those sites. So Eli says, wasn't King Tut only popular because that's part of it? But yeah, it's a fancy tomb. So yeah, he didn't do much. King Tut's a very minor figure in the grand scheme of things. It's because Tut's tomb was found relatively unmolested. The seal was still on the main entrance to the burial chamber. The gold was all still in there. The chariots, a lot of the stuff. There's some evidence it may have been robbed at some point. but it's because it was one of the only tombs we found relatively intact. So it gives us a sense of what some of the other tombs must have looked like before they were robbed. A tomb like Ramses II would have been absolutely just mind-blowing if it hadn't been robbed. But there was no curse. Like Howard Carter, the guy who discovered it, lived another 15 years. He didn't die in the months afterwards and things like that. So here again, just some more of the sights from inside these tombs in the Valley of the Kings. There are so many stories being told on the walls of these tombs. You can see stories of conquests and of battles that were fought and things these different pharaohs did. Like, look at this one. You've got these people tied up, and there's obviously a story being told here about things from the reign of these pharaohs. Ramses II wasn't the pharaoh of the Exodus. There's a number of reasons, not the least of which is the fact that Ramses II was 200 years too late to be the pharaoh of the Exodus. The Exodus happened in the mid 1400s BC. Ramses was like 180 years later. He's much too late. And there's a lot of other factors that I'll get into when I do a video about that at some point. But Ramses is just way too late to be the pharaoh of the Exodus. There's just another view of the Valley of the Kings. So this here is, there it is. That's the tomb of Amenhotep II, who I believe all the evidence points to being the pharaoh of the Exodus. So I had to take a picture of that. That was, again, one you can't go into. If you Google images, you can Google photographs from inside the tombs of guys like Amenhotep II, and you can see there's a lot of rubble and it's very unstable. And until they do a lot more cleanup and restoration work, they won't be able to open tombs like that. But still, a lot of beautiful things to be seen in a tomb like Amenhotep II. Signs of or remains of the British presence in Egypt. Not a whole lot. Just beyond the fact that English is still widely spoken there. But that's true in a lot of places. That's possible, but I think the version of Exodus that we have today was probably written much later than Ramses, probably 700-800 BC. But I would guess that it's probably based on earlier copies. A lot of the records that we have today are copies of copies of copies of copies, and sometimes there's updating that goes on. And one of the reasons why people say that Ramses II was the pharaoh of the Exodus is because in Exodus there's reference to them having built the city of Pi-Ramses or P-Ramses, which is a later name that wouldn't have existed at the time of the Exodus. And so what's happened there is that you have whoever the editors are who are copying this is giving the new name. So, for example, when I talk about the city of Toronto, Canada, Toronto is the modern name. But during the War of 1812, it was York. Same city, different name. But when we refer to it, we call it Toronto because that's the name we know it by today. So the person who was copying the Exodus record is probably giving the name by which the people of his time knew some of these places. And we have other examples of that in the Bible where you have updated names being given for places that wouldn't have had that name at the time that the story was happening. What's the situation for tourists during Ramadan? The only thing, you might have a little more trouble finding food during the day. It's not impossible. But yeah, a lot of restaurants cater specifically to tourists. Tourism is one of the top money makers in Egypt. So any given day, there are tens of thousands of tourists in Egypt. So they know they need to be fed. And there are also Christians in Egypt. 10% of the population of Egypt is Christian. And those people need to eat somewhere too. So we had plenty of places that we could eat. But yes, you will find that some places will be closed during the day because of Ramadan. But it wasn't an issue. It really wasn't. No, the father of King Tut was Akhenaten, most likely. What's the ground like for the tombs? So most of the tombs, they actually had put down like a wooden walkway with planks that you could walk on instead of the original. Favorite pharaoh? That's a great question. I'm still learning a lot about the pharaohs. Let me think if I have a favorite. I don't know that I have one right now, but ask me again in a couple months. You know what? I didn't drink any beer when I was in Egypt. In fact, it was really hard to find, especially during Ramadan. I think the only place anybody had any alcohol on our trip was at our hotel in Luxor. They had you could order beer and wine, and it was all Egyptian made. I had some Egyptian rum mixed with Coke, and that wasn't real particularly great. That was the only alcohol I had on the entire trip. Tutmos the Third. There are some issues with Tutmos the Third. I've seen other people argue that, and when I do my video on why I don't think it's Tutmos the Third, not the least of which, again, I think the timeline's off. But have I ever done a video on the Duke of Marlborough? No, but I agree with you that he is definitely in the conversation for Britain's greatest general. I don't think Wellington is one of Britain's greatest generals. Actually, Tom Riddle, great name, by the way. Understanding the Coptic language was actually one of the keys to Champollion deciphering hieroglyphics, because he figured out that Coptic, which was the language of Egyptian Christians, they were still practicing that language in their church services. Coptic sounded very similar to the sounds that the hieroglyphs make, and that was actually by learning Coptic. That was a big key to him deciphering hieroglyphics. Yes, I am still doing, Kyle, Patreon shout outs. I'll be getting back to those here in the next couple of days. No, aliens had nothing to do with the pyramids being built. It was just a wonder of technology and engineering by the Egyptians. Did the pyramids feel any bigger or smaller than I imagined before going? I would say it was right about what I expected. My gut reaction when I first saw the Great Pyramid was that it didn't seem as big as I thought it would. But then as I hung out around it a little bit longer, it definitely was big. No, I didn't take any rocks from anywhere. They're real sticklers for that stuff when you try to leave. If you try to leave the country with that stuff. I would encourage you guys. There are some great videos on YouTube about how hieroglyphics were deciphered. The Rosetta Stone was part of that process, but as I mentioned a little while ago, finding the Rosetta Stone did not suddenly unlock hieroglyphics. It was one of the key components of eventually deciphering them, but it was a couple of decades after the Rosetta Stone was found before they finally unlocked them. No, I didn't really take any souvenirs from Egypt, believe it or not. Again, here's inside of another one of the tombs. Really, really just amazing stuff. All right, so here's some of the Greek that was written, some of the ancient Greek that's written on the walls of some of the tombs. And you saw a lot of it in some of these places. It was really cool. I believe there is a tomb for Imhotep, but I don't remember seeing it. If they stamped my passport every time I went to London, then I would be out of room. But they don't stamp your passport in London because you go through e-gates, so you don't even have to deal with a person. You never interact with a human if you're an American flying into London. So, yeah. So otherwise, it probably would be out of room by now. Yeah, here's just more and more Valley of the Kings. Look at the color. Just look at how amazing the color is there. So here's the Temple of Hatshepsut. So if you're not familiar with, there was actually a pretty terrible terrorist attack, I think in 1997, that happened at this temple. And there's these horrifying images of blood running down out of the temple from the like 50 or 60 tourists that were killed by terrorists in the attack. So these around the outside of the area where the Temple of Hatshepsut are what they call the tombs of the nobles. These were people who were not royal, but wanted their tombs to be close to the Valley of the Kings. And so they carved their tombs up in the rock in these hills that surround the Valley of the Kings. Did I face any language barriers? No, not really. Like I said, we had a tour guide, Ahmed, with us who spoke English the whole time. But a lot of people spoke enough English to get by. And that's true in most countries that I've been to. Very few times have I had any real issues with language. So the driver who took me to the airport when I flew home, my flight was at 2 a.m. There were like 5 of us on the flight at 2 a.m. coming home. So we didn't even go to bed. And my driver did not speak a word of English. And so he would take his phone and he would speak into it and use Google Translate and then show it to me when he wanted to say something to me. And that worked out fine. So Temple of Hatshepsut was cool. It was like I wasn't blown away by that compared to the other stuff we saw. So then we got to go, and this was really cool. This is actually an Egyptian family home that we went to, and they served us a meal there, and the food was fantastic. It was so good. I guess that's the only picture I took of us inside the home. Honestly, no, I don't think I really saw any Roman influence in Cairo. But remember, by the time the Romans come along, Cairo is like an afterthought. The center of action's in Alexandria, which is up on the Mediterranean. So that's probably where you're going to see a lot more Greek and Roman influence. The food was so good. It was amazing. Cleopatra would be a pharaoh because pharaoh is the word for the monarch. And a queen in the Egyptian sense would be like a consort, would be like the wife of the pharaoh. So whereas Cleopatra actually was the monarch herself. We were in Egypt for a week. I did not do any haggling. I've never been good at that, and I didn't really buy anything that I needed to haggle over. Yeah, so here we are on the Nile River. We actually got to go out on a boat, and we were in 2 boats. So that was half our group there in the other boat, the other sailboat. But that was really cool, getting to actually go out and sail on the Nile River for a little bit. We probably did that, I don't know, maybe an hour and a half or so. There's actually, if I would have done the longer Egypt tour, which is a 9-day tour instead of a 7-day tour, we would have actually spent the night on a Nile River cruise, but we didn't do that. Oh, this was really cool. This kid had to have been like 13. Well, then Sander had to take a turn. On the Nile River in a boat with Chris. Did I see or hear anything about Thutmose's second tomb? I didn't while we were there, but I have been reading about that, about the possibility that that's not really his mummy. So yeah. Are you ready for Italy? I'm not going to Italy anytime soon. I was just there in January, but I don't have any upcoming trips to Italy. Did the Arab Spring actually accomplish anything? I guess long-term, not really, except that I think it impacted some of the laws that are currently in place there to prevent another thing like that from happening. But Ahmed, our tour guide, was telling us that he was a part of all of those events. I think he was specifically a part of the protests that overthrew the government, the Muslim Brotherhood government. So no, I don't think it really lasted. Honestly, I did a really good job of avoiding any of the people who tried to sell me things by just looking at the ground. If I walked past people and just kept my head down, nobody tried to sell me anything. They bothered the people around me. I found it to be a very effective strategy to avoid that. Okay, a few more pictures for you here. All right, so here's where you see everybody drinking the Egyptian beers. That was out on our kind of out in the outdoor seating area right on the Nile River of our hotel in Luxor. And we actually had a pool that was on the river. It was really, really cool. All right, these were a couple of extra pictures I got from the that were sent to me by other people along the way. Yeah, there's another one of me sleeping on the bus. There's one of me sleeping in the hotel. So, so there you go. Those are most of the photos that I took. And like I said, I do have videos coming out. I've already edited most of the first video, which is our visit to the pyramids at Giza and the Sphinx. So that'll be coming soon. So last chance, any specific questions that any of you have about Egypt, about the experience, about recommendations, things like that? Zaki, I appreciate that. I try to do that. So Eli says, don't they have any Indus River artifacts or seals in Egypt? I did not personally see any. I'm not saying they don't exist. But I didn't see anything like that. It was an absolutely phenomenal trip. So much so that I definitely want to take another group to Egypt because I want to go back and I want to learn hieroglyphics before I go back. Hey, again from Ireland, Adam, how's it going, man? It's a big weekend for you. Oh, St. Patrick's Day. Yeah. I went out with some family yesterday for St. Patrick's. Next tour is actually the end of April. It's Berlin, Dresden, Prague, Bratislava, and Vienna, but that is already closed. Nobody else can sign up for that, unfortunately. Might visit Egypt soon. Any recommendations? Definitely go to Giza. Definitely go to Saqqara. Go to the Grand Museum. That's all in the Cairo area. I would also go to the Bent Pyramid and the Red Pyramid, which we didn't get to go to, but I would like to go to if I ever go back. And then definitely go to Luxor. And I've also heard Abu Simbel is incredible, and we didn't get that far south to go to Abu Simbel. That would have been, if we would have done the 9-day version, which maybe that's what I'll do next time, we would have gone to Abu Simbel. And Ahmed told us that to him, Abu Simbel is the best site to visit in Egypt. That was his personal feeling. Yeah, I mean, so it's the furthest we got upriver was Luxor. So you're like in the middle of Egypt at that point. So we didn't get anywhere down toward like Aswan or anything. Going to see King Charles IV in Prague. I don't know what all we're going to see in Prague. I mean, I know some of the basics, like we're going to the castle, we're going to the to Kutna Hora, things like that. Do I like to give history lessons on the trip? Not really, no. I was there to learn just like everybody else. We had Ahmed for that. Ahmed knew far more than I could have ever taught to anybody. So it would have been, I think, arrogance of me to try and add to what he was already teaching us. No, I really didn't have any issues with the scamming. At the airport, when I was flying home, I had a bunch of people try to like carry my bags for me and then wanted a bunch of money for it. So you just have to learn to be intentional in saying no. Just say no, take your bag back from them, and just deal with it. No other planned trips in 2025, but there will be some, just nothing that I've announced yet. Yeah, I'd love to go to Carthage and Alexandria. Carthage is all the way over to, I mean, that's not an area that I'm going to get to anytime soon. That's in Tunisia. Alexandria is somewhere I would like to go to. So here's Graham. Graham was on the tour with us. So any questions he's answering, he definitely knows what's up because he was there. Say yes and don't pay. I mean, yeah, you could do that too. Do I know what museum has an ancient battery artifact? I'm not familiar with that, so I couldn't tell you. Yeah, that's possible. Alexandria is disappointing in person. Having not been there, I can't really speak to it one way or the other. All right, last chance. Any questions anybody has before we wrap up this stream? I'm back home now. I'm not traveling again into the end of April. More than like a day or two here or there. So I should be home to do a lot more streaming and do a lot more regular content. Definitely going to be doing more gaming content as well. So, yeah, I'd like to go to the Western Desert, but it just depends on whether or not a group tour can take us there. Because if I go to Egypt, it's going to be part of a group tour because that's really the way to go. What's the next video going to be about? I don't know yet. I don't have any videos planned at the moment. Lost Army, no, didn't come up in conversation. Could I see myself living full-time in Egypt? No, probably not. I think it's a great place to visit and the people were wonderful, but there's definitely a huge difference in culture and just difference of living. And yeah, I don't think I could, no. Yeah, I'd very much love to go to Turkey at some point. I could see that happening. Do the trip bookings cost anything? Yeah, so like I think the Egypt tour, I want to say it was like $2,400 a person plus your airfare to get there, which like if you live in Europe, it's not that expensive compared to coming from the US. It's a lot more expensive. All right, we're going to wrap it up right there. Thank you guys so much for joining me for the stream. Thank you to everybody who donated in the super chats, and we will see you again soon. Thanks for watching.